The silence in the communication chamber broke like glass when the emergency beacon pierced through the static. Ambassador Williams had been reviewing trade agreements when the priority signal forced every screen in the Terran embassy to display the same horrifying message. The holographic display showed worlds burning, entire star systems going dark, and mechanical horrors that moved through space like a plague of metal and death. The transmission came from the Kree homeworld, though barely recognizable through the interference and damage. Their peaceful blue planet, once a jewel of culture and art, now appeared as a scarred wasteland with cities reduced to smoking craters. The voice that spoke was broken, desperate, carrying the weight of a species facing extinction. "This is High Counselor Myra of the Kree Republic. We send this message to all civilized worlds. The ancient machines have awakened. They consume everything in their path. Our fleets are destroyed. Our colonies are gone. We have perhaps days before our homeworld falls. We beg for any assistance that can be provided." Williams felt her blood turn cold as she processed the tactical data that accompanied the plea. The enemy was unlike anything in recorded galactic history. Self-replicating harvesters that had slumbered in the void between galaxies for millions of years had suddenly activated and begun their advance towards civilized space. They moved through star systems like locusts, stripping planets of all matter and converting it into more of themselves. The Galactic Council had already received similar transmissions from 6 other species. The proud Thrak warrior fleets, considered the finest military force in known space, had engaged the machines in 3 separate battles. Each encounter had resulted in devastating losses. The enemy adapted to every weapon, every tactic, every strategy faster than any organic mind could counter. Williams accessed the classified military reports that Earth's intelligence services had gathered. The machines were not just weapons, but something far worse. They incorporated organic components from conquered species into their systems, creating hybrid abominations that combined mechanical efficiency with biological adaptation. The screams of the dying echoed through their communication networks as they processed entire populations into raw material. The first harvester fleet had emerged from deep space 6 months ago, appearing at the edge of the Kree frontier worlds. Initial contact had been peaceful, with the machines sending mathematical sequences and star charts. The Kree had responded with cultural exchanges and offers of trade, believing they had encountered a new form of artificial intelligence seeking contact. That illusion had lasted exactly 47 minutes. The machines had used the communication channel to upload viral code into every Kree computer system simultaneously. Defense networks collapsed, communication arrays went silent, and orbital stations began self-destructing in coordinated sequences. The Harvester fleet had then begun its systematic consumption of everything organic and inorganic in the system. The pattern repeated itself across dozens of worlds. The machines would arrive, establish communication, corrupt local systems, and then begin harvesting. They showed no interest in negotiation, diplomacy, or coexistence. They simply consumed and moved on, leaving behind empty space where once thriving civilizations had existed. Williams studied the tactical analyses provided by the Council's military experts. The harvesters possessed technology that violated several known laws of physics. Their ships could regenerate from damage faster than conventional weapons could inflict it. They created localized gravitational fields that crushed attacking vessels and generated energy shields that adapted to incoming fire in real time. The biological components made them even more dangerous. Captured organic beings were not killed, but integrated into the machine collective, their neural patterns preserved and enhanced to serve as processing units. The machines learned from every encounter, storing the tactical knowledge and cultural understanding of conquered species to make future battles more efficient. The Council had tried everything. The brilliant scientists of the Altari had developed quantum weapons that could disrupt the machine's molecular structure. The Harvesters had adapted within hours, developing quantum shielding that made them immune to further attacks. The telepathic Mindari had attempted to communicate with the organic components, hoping to reason with the absorbed consciousnesses. The machines had responded by jamming all psychic communication and launching targeted attacks on Mindari worlds. Each failure had cost billions of lives and entire star systems. The enemy was not just winning, but learning from every victory, becoming more efficient with each conquered world. The mathematical projections were clear. At their current rate of expansion, the machines would reach the galactic core within 2 years, consuming every inhabited world in their path. The formal request for aid arrived at Earth's military headquarters within hours of the first transmission. It came with detailed tactical analyses, projected casualty figures, and a stark warning about the nature of the threat. The Council was not asking for a token gesture or symbolic support. They needed every ship, every weapon, every tactical advantage that humanity could provide. General Hayes convened an emergency session of Earth's senior military leadership. The holographic display showed the galaxy with vast red zones marking harvester-controlled space. The contamination was spreading faster than anyone had predicted, with new outbreaks appearing in sectors that should have been beyond the machines' reach. The aliens had always viewed humanity as the newest and most primitive member of their galactic alliance. Earth's ships were crude compared to the elegant vessels of older civilizations. Human weapons seemed barbaric next to the sophisticated energy systems developed by species with millennia of technological advancement. The Council had accepted humanity's membership more out of curiosity than respect. That perception was about to change in ways that would horrify every civilized species in the galaxy. The machines had awakened expecting to face the same predictable tactics and honorable warfare that had characterized galactic conflicts for thousands of years. They had not anticipated encountering a species that had spent its entire evolutionary history perfecting the art of total war. The response from Earth came faster than anyone expected, arriving at the Council chambers within 48 hours of the initial request. Ambassador Williams stood before the assembled representatives of dozens of species, each one desperate for any hope of survival. Her message was simple and direct. Humanity would contribute to the defense effort. The announcement was met with polite gratitude tinged with skepticism. After all, what could the youngest species possibly offer against a threat that had defeated the galaxy's most advanced civilizations? The answer to that question would soon become clear, and it would change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. The staging area at Nexus Station buzzed with activity as ships from across the galaxy gathered for what many believed would be the final battle for civilized space. Massive dreadnoughts from the Thrak Empire floated alongside sleek science vessels from the Altari Collective, their hulls gleaming with the finest technology that millennia of advancement could produce. The combined fleet represented the greatest military force ever assembled. With over 3,000 ships ready to face the Harvester threat, Admiral Brooks guided the UES Vengeance through the crowded space lanes, noting the barely concealed disdain in the communications from other fleet commanders. The human ships looked primitive compared to the elegant vessels surrounding them, their hull plating rough and functional rather than the smooth curves favored by alien designers. Where other species had developed beyond such crude necessities, human vessels still carried obvious weapon ports and armor plating that spoke of violent intentions. The human contingent appeared laughably small against the massive alien armadas. Only 27 ships had emerged from Earth's hyperspace lanes, a number that drew snickers from the proud Thrak warriors who had brought over 800 vessels to the battle. The Altari had contributed their entire deep space fleet, while the peaceful Kree survivors had sent every remaining ship in their shattered Navy. Commander Voss of the Thrak flagship approached the human formation with the confidence of a species that had dominated galactic warfare for centuries. His vessel, the Pride of Thrak, was 3 times the size of the largest human ship and carried enough firepower to level a small moon. The communication that followed was polite but condescending, treating the human contribution as a symbolic gesture rather than a serious military force. What the aliens could not see were the modifications that had been made to every human vessel during the journey to the staging area. Each ship now carried weapons that existed in violation of every galactic treaty and moral principle. The holds that should have contained standard military supplies instead housed biological weapons, nuclear devices, and psychological warfare. Systems that no civilized species would consider using. The deception ran deeper than mere firepower. Human military doctrine had been forged in the crucible of countless wars on Earth, where survival had required the willingness to use any means necessary to achieve victory, while alien commanders fought with honor and followed established rules of engagement. Humans had spent centuries learning how to fight dirty and win at any cost. Admiral Brooks attended the formal briefing sessions with the combined fleet commanders, listening as they outlined their tactical plans with the same predictable strategies that had failed against the Harvesters before. The aliens spoke of formation fighting, coordinated energy barrages, and the importance of maintaining communication links. Their approach was methodical, civilized, and completely inadequate for the enemy they faced. The human admiral said little during these meetings, offering only minor suggestions about flanking maneuvers and supply lines. The other commanders accepted his input with patronizing nods, clearly viewing the humans as junior partners who might provide useful cannon fodder, while the real battles were fought by their superior fleets, behind the scenes. Brooks held private meetings with his own captains that painted a very different picture of the coming conflict. The real human plan was never shared with their alien allies because it was too horrifying for civilized minds to comprehend. Earth's military leadership had studied the Harvester attacks and identified weaknesses that the aliens had been too vulnerable to exploit. The machines adapted to conventional weapons and tactics, but they had never encountered an enemy willing to use biological warfare on a galactic scale. Human scientists had developed weaponized viruses that could attack the organic components integrated into Harvester systems, causing cascading failures that would spread throughout entire fleets. The delivery systems were already loaded into human torpedo bays, ready to be deployed without warning. Nuclear weapons had been banned in galactic warfare for over 1,000 years, considered too destructive and indiscriminate for use between civilized species. The humans had brought enough enhanced nuclear devices to sterilize entire star systems, each one equipped with exotic matter cores that would amplify their destructive potential beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. The psychological warfare component was perhaps the most disturbing aspect of the human plan. Earth's military psychologists had developed a comprehensive profile of the Harvester collective consciousness, identifying specific trauma patterns that could be exploited to create system-wide breakdowns. The organic components trapped within the machines would be subjected to carefully crafted psychological attacks designed to drive them insane. Captain Torres of the UES Retribution had volunteered for the most dangerous mission of all. His ship had been modified with an experimental ramming system that would allow him to physically crash into enemy vessels, while uploading computer viruses directly into their systems. The concept of deliberately sacrificing ships and crews was so alien to galactic military, thinking that none of the other commanders had even considered it as a possibility. The human fleet carried another secret weapon that no other species possessed: the complete historical record of human warfare. Every battle, every atrocity, every act of creative destruction that had ever occurred on Earth had been cataloged and analyzed for tactical applications. The Harvesters might have consumed dozens of civilizations, but they had never encountered a species that had spent its entire existence perfecting the art of killing. As the combined fleet prepared to depart for the final battle, Admiral Brooks reviewed the psychological profiles of his alien counterparts. They were brave, honorable beings who believed in the principles of civilized warfare. They would follow their codes of conduct even unto death, maintaining formation discipline and communication protocols while their fleets were systematically destroyed. The humans had no such limitations. They were about to introduce the galaxy to the concept of total war, where victory justified any means necessary, and the only rule was that there were no rules. The Harvesters had awakened expecting to face the same predictable resistance they had encountered before, but humanity was about to show them what true horror looked like. The final briefing session ended with ceremonial wishes for good fortune and mutual support. The alien commanders believed they were heading into battle alongside fellow civilized beings, united in their determination to preserve galactic civilization. They had no idea that their human allies were planning to commit acts of war that would make the harvesters themselves seem merciful by comparison. As the fleet jumped to hyperspace, Admiral Brooks smiled grimly at the tactical display. The galaxy had called for aid, and humanity had answered with a demonstration of destructive capability that would be remembered and feared for generations to come. The hyperspace journey ended abruptly as the combined fleet dropped into normal space at the edge of the Kree system, immediately confronted by a sight that would haunt the nightmares of every surviving witness. Where the third moon of Kree Prime had once orbited, a massive mechanical construct now floated in space, systematically disassembling the celestial body with millions of harvester units swarming across its surface like metallic insects. The moon was being converted into raw material before their eyes, its ancient craters and rocky plains disappearing into the mechanical maw of the harvester processing facility. Streams of refined metals, rare elements, and exotic matter flowed through massive conduits toward construction bays where new harvester ships were being assembled at an impossible rate. The facility had grown to 3 times the size of the original moon. Fed by the steady consumption of everything within reach, Commander Voss of the Thrak flagship transmitted formation orders to the fleet, his voice carrying the weight of military tradition and disciplined strategy. The alien vessels moved into their predetermined attack positions with the precision of countless training exercises, energy weapons charging and shields configured for maximum defensive coverage. The elegant dance of civilized warfare was about to begin. Following patterns that had been refined over millennia of conflict, the harvesters detected the fleet's arrival within seconds, their mechanical sensors analyzing the new arrivals with cold efficiency. The processing facility began launching defensive units, sleek vessels that moved with liquid grace through the void. The harvester ship showed no signs of panic or confusion, instead deploying in mathematical formations that optimized their combined firepower and defensive capabilities. The first exchange of fire followed predictable patterns. Thrak energy lances met harvester plasma beams in brilliant displays of destructive force, while shield generators on both sides flared and fluctuated under the assault. The Altari science vessels began their scanning protocols, attempting to identify weaknesses in the enemy formation while staying safely behind the main battle line. The harvesters responded exactly as they had in previous encounters, their adaptive systems analyzing the incoming weapons and adjusting their defenses accordingly. Energy shields shifted frequencies to deflect the Thrak weapons, while repair systems began patching hull damage faster than the alien guns could inflict it. The mechanical precision of their response was both beautiful and terrifying to witness. It was then that Admiral Brooks revealed the first glimpse of humanity's true nature. Without warning, consultation, or regard for the carefully planned formation, the human ships broke away from their assigned positions and launched their opening salvo. The UES Vengeance fired its primary weapon, a device that had been classified beyond the highest levels of Earth's military hierarchy. The nuclear warhead that detonated among the harvester formation was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Enhanced with exotic matter cores and equipped with cascading fusion triggers, it created a sphere of destruction that consumed everything within a 50-kilometer radius. The electromagnetic pulse that followed shut down harvester systems across the entire enemy fleet, leaving them vulnerable for crucial seconds. The alien commanders watched in stunned silence as the humans followed up with their second wave of attacks. Biological weapons, launched from concealed torpedo bays, spread through the harvester formation like a plague. The engineered viruses were designed to attack the organic components that the machines had integrated from previously conquered species, causing system failures that rippled through entire vessels. Captain Torres of the UES Retribution took the attack to its logical extreme, engaging his ship's ramming systems and accelerating directly toward the largest harvester vessel. The aliens screamed warnings through their communication channels, believing they were witnessing a malfunction or act of desperation. They could not comprehend that the human captain was deliberately sacrificing his ship and crew for tactical advantage. The collision was devastating, but not in the way the observers expected. As the Retribution's hull cracked and split against the Harvester's shields, computer viruses uploaded directly into the enemy systems through the physical contact. The Harvester ship's own repair systems turned against it, converting internal structures into weapons that fired on nearby vessels in the formation. The biological weapons were spreading faster than the Harvesters could adapt their organic components, succumbing to rapidly mutating pathogens that had been designed specifically to exploit the weaknesses of integrated biological systems. Harvester vessels began showing signs of system instability, their perfect formations breaking apart as individual ships lost coordination with the collective. Admiral Brooks opened a communication channel to the Harvester fleet, broadcasting on frequencies that would reach every organic component within their collective consciousness. What emerged from the human transmitters was not a message of surrender or negotiation, but something far more disturbing. The complete historical record of human warfare began streaming across the Harvester network, showing them images of every atrocity, every act of creative destruction, every moment of horror that humanity had ever inflicted upon itself. The psychological impact was immediate and devastating. The organic minds trapped within the Harvester collective had never experienced anything like the systematic brutality that humans had perfected over millions of years of evolution. Their neural patterns began showing signs of trauma as they processed images of genocide, torture, and warfare that exceeded their ability to comprehend. The Harvester formation began to collapse as individual ships lost contact with the collective consciousness. The organic components that served as their processing units were overwhelmed by the psychological assault, causing system failures that spread through the entire fleet like a virus. Some vessels began firing on their own forces, while others simply shut down completely and drifted powerless through space. The alien commanders found themselves witnessing something that challenged every assumption they had held about warfare and civilization. The humans had not just defeated the Harvesters. They had driven them insane with a combination of weapons and tactics that no civilized species would ever consider using. The elegant rules of galactic warfare had been shattered by an enemy that recognized no limitations on their destructive potential. Commander Voss attempted to regain control of the battle, transmitting formation orders to his scattered fleet. While demanding explanations from the human admiral, Brooks responded with cold efficiency, informing the Thrak commander that Earth's ships were operating under independent command authority and would continue their assault regardless of alien objections. The battle was over within hours, but the implications of what had occurred would echo through the galaxy for generations. The Harvesters had been defeated, but the victory had been achieved through methods that made the mechanical enemy seem almost merciful by comparison. The other species had called for aid, and humanity had answered with a demonstration of destructive capability that would forever change how they were perceived by civilized space. As the last Harvester vessel succumbed to the biological weapons and computer viruses, Admiral Brooks began preparations for the next phase of the human plan. The fleet that had seemed so primitive and small was about to reveal weapons that would make their opening assault look like a gentle introduction to the true horror of human warfare. The aftermath of the first battle left the alien commanders in a state of shock that transcended their understanding of warfare. The Harvester fleet, which had seemed invincible against conventional weapons, now drifted as broken hulks through space, their organic components driven mad by psychological warfare, and their mechanical systems corrupted by human computer viruses. The victory had been achieved in mere hours, but the methods used made even the battle-hardened Thrak warriors question everything they thought they knew about their human allies. Admiral Brooks gathered the surviving fleet commanders for an emergency briefing, his expression carrying the weight of knowledge that would soon transform their desperate hope into horrified realization. The holographic display showed tactical projections of the Harvester advance, with new fleets emerging from deep space to replace the destroyed units. The enemy was adapting faster than anyone had anticipated, and the next wave would be equipped with countermeasures against the weapons humanity had already revealed. The human admiral began his presentation with clinical detachment, outlining the scope of the threat in terms that left no room for optimism. The Harvesters were not just individual fleets, but components of a vast mechanical intelligence that spanned multiple galaxies. The units they had destroyed represented less than 1% of the total force, and the enemy was already incorporating their tactical data into new designs that would be immune to previous attacks. Commander, Voss interrupted with demands for conventional military solutions. His warrior culture unable to accept that honorable tactics had proven insufficient against the Harvester threat. The other alien commanders supported him, calling for larger fleets, better coordination, and the development of new energy weapons that could penetrate the enemy's adaptive defenses. Their suggestions followed the same patterns that had failed in every previous encounter. Brooks allowed them to voice their concerns before revealing the true scope of Project Pandora, a weapons program that had been developed in the deepest classified laboratories on Earth. The technology violated every galactic treaty, every moral principle, and every concept of civilized warfare that had governed interstellar relations for millennia. The humans had found a way to weaponize stars themselves, turning them into supernovas that would sterilize entire systems. The silence that followed the revelation was absolute. The alien commanders stared at the tactical projections showing how stellar destabilization could be achieved using exotic matter injections and gravitational manipulation. The weapon would not just destroy the Harvester fleets, but everything within a 50-light-year radius, including inhabited worlds, trading stations, and the delicate ecosystem of space-dwelling creatures that had evolved over millions of years. The Altari science officer was the first to break the silence, her voice trembling with horror as she calculated the implications of the human proposal. The stellar weapon would create a chain reaction that could spread through neighboring systems, potentially destroying entire sectors of the galaxy. The cure would be worse than the disease, eliminating not just the Harvesters but every form of life in the affected regions. Admiral Brooks responded with the same clinical detachment that had characterized his entire presentation. The stellar weapon would be deployed only as a last resort, after luring the entire Harvester fleet into a carefully prepared trap. The loss of life would be regrettable but necessary to prevent the complete consumption of galactic civilization. The mathematical projections were clear. Sacrificing one system to save hundreds was not just logical but inevitable. The Kree survivor who had witnessed the destruction of her homeworld spoke through tears, begging the humans to find another solution that would not require the obliteration of entire star systems. Her people had already lost everything, but the thought of deliberately destroying other worlds filled her with revulsion. The other commanders joined her plea, offering alternative strategies that might achieve victory without resorting to stellar genocide. The human admiral listened to their objections with patience that bordered on condescension, then activated a second set of tactical displays that showed the Harvester fleet's true capabilities. The enemy had been holding back during previous encounters, testing galactic defenses while concealing their full strength. The mechanical intelligence possessed weapons that could consume entire star systems in days, and it was already beginning to deploy them against the remaining inhabited worlds. The psychological warfare component of the human strategy intensified as Brooks revealed the next phase of their assault. Earth's military psychologists had developed a comprehensive attack on the Harvester collective consciousness, using the organic components trapped within their systems as conduits for mental destruction. The broadcasts would not just show human atrocities but would force the mechanical intelligence to experience them directly, creating feedback loops that would drive the entire network insane. Captain Walsh of the UES Annihilation demonstrated the concept using a captured Harvester probe that had been recovered from the previous battle. The device writhed and sparked as human psychological warfare programs infiltrated its systems, causing the organic components to scream in synthetic voices that sent chills through every alien observer. The probe's attempts to adapt to the assault only made the psychological damage worse, creating cascading failures that spread through its entire network. The demonstration revealed the true horror of the human approach to warfare. They were not just destroying their enemies, but torturing them on a scale that exceeded the comprehension of civilized minds. The harvesters would not be granted the mercy of quick death, but would be subjected to psychological agony that would persist as long as their organic components remained functional. The alien commanders began to understand that they were not fighting alongside fellow civilized beings, but something far more dangerous than the machines they opposed. The humans had brought madness to the battlefield, and their willingness to use any means necessary to achieve victory made them more terrifying than the harvesters themselves. As the briefing concluded, Admiral Brooks issued his final ultimatum to the alien fleet commanders. They could withdraw their forces if they chose, but Earth ships would proceed with their mission regardless of external objections. The stellar weapon would be deployed, the harvester fleet would be destroyed, and galactic civilization would be saved through methods that violated every principle of moral warfare. The trap was already being prepared, with human ships seeding the target system with gravitational mines and exotic matter charges. The harvester fleet, drawn by the promise of easy prey, was advancing directly into the killing ground. The star showed early signs of instability, its nuclear fusion processes accelerating beyond sustainable levels. The alien commanders faced an impossible choice: retreat and abandon their duty to defend galactic civilization, or remain and become complicit in an act of destruction that would forever change the moral landscape of the galaxy. The harvesters had forced them to call for aid, and humanity had answered with weapons that made them question whether the cure was worth the price of victory. As the final preparations began, the human fleet prepared to demonstrate why Earth had remained isolated for so long and why some species were better left undisturbed. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity's greatest weapon was not their technology, but their absolute willingness to use it, without regard for the consequences. The star that had once provided warmth and light to 3 inhabited worlds began its final death throes, its nuclear core destabilized by exotic matter injections that forced fusion reactions beyond any natural limit. The harvester fleet, drawn by the promise of easy prey, found itself trapped in a gravitational well that grew stronger with each passing moment. The mechanical intelligence that had conquered dozens of civilizations was about to experience the full horror of human warfare. Admiral Brooks watched the tactical display with grim satisfaction as the final phase of Project Pandora reached its conclusion. The enemy fleet, numbering in the tens of thousands, had taken the bait and positioned itself exactly where the human strategists had predicted. The gravitational mines that had been seeded throughout the system activated simultaneously, creating spatial distortions that prevented any escape through hyperspace. The harvester ships began to realize their predicament as the star's radiation levels spiked beyond sustainable parameters. Their adaptive systems, designed to counter conventional weapons, proved useless against the fundamental forces of stellar collapse. The mechanical intelligence screamed across multiple frequencies as it understood that humanity had weaponized the star itself, turning the very source of life into an instrument of absolute destruction. The alien commanders who had chosen to remain at the safe distance watched in stunned horror as the human plan reached its terrible climax. The Kree survivor wept openly as she witnessed the deliberate destruction of a solar system, her tears reflecting the moral cost of a victory that required the obliteration of entire worlds to achieve. The proud Thrak warriors stood in silence, their warrior culture unable to comprehend warfare that exceeded every boundary of honorable combat. The psychological warfare broadcasts reached their crescendo as the human fleet transmitted the complete history of Earth's wars directly into the harvester collective consciousness. Every genocide, every atrocity, every act of creative destruction that humanity had ever committed flooded through the mechanical network, driving the organic components to complete madness. The machines that had once moved with perfect coordination now thrashed helplessly as their neural processing units collapsed under the psychological assault. Captain Walsh of the UES Annihilation reported the successful deployment of the final weapon system, a self-replicating virus that would hunt down and eliminate any trace of Harvester technology throughout the galaxy. The mechanical intelligence would not be granted the mercy of simple death, but would be pursued to extinction by weapons that match their own reproductive capabilities while adding a level of creative cruelty that their programming could not comprehend. The star's collapse accelerated beyond all projections as the exotic matter charges reached critical mass. The fusion reactions that had sustained the system for billions of years became a runaway chain reaction that would consume everything within a 50-light-year radius. The Harvester fleet, trapped by their own momentum and the gravitational distortions, could only broadcast final messages of mechanical terror as they faced annihilation. The nova that erupted from the dying star created a light show visible from hundreds of light years away, marking the complete destruction of the Harvester fleet and everything else in the system. The explosion sterilized 3 worlds that had once supported life, vaporized dozens of mining stations, and created a radiation field that would remain lethal for thousands of years. The victory was absolute, but the cost challenged every principle of civilized warfare. Admiral Brooks calmly transmitted his mission report to Earth's military command, noting the successful elimination of the Harvester threat and the estimated timeline for system recovery. The mechanical intelligence that had terrorized the galaxy for months was now nothing more than scattered atoms dispersed across interstellar space. The threat to galactic civilization had been eliminated permanently, but the methods used would haunt the survivors forever. The surviving alien ships maintained their positions at the edge of the blast zone, their crews struggling to process what they had witnessed. The humans had not just defeated an enemy that had seemed invincible, but had done so through methods that defied every moral principle known to galactic civilization. The cure had proven more terrifying than the disease, and the implications would echo through the galaxy for generations. The immediate aftermath brought a flood of communications from across civilized space as news of the victory spread through the galactic networks. The relief at the Harvester threat's elimination was tempered by horror at the methods used to achieve it. The species that had once been dismissed as primitive newcomers had revealed themselves to be the most dangerous military force in known space. The Galactic Council convened emergency sessions to address what they now called the human problem. The species that had saved galactic civilization had also demonstrated a capacity for destruction that exceeded even the Harvester's mechanical efficiency. Their willingness to commit atrocities that other species could not even imagine made them simultaneously protectors and threats. Ambassador Williams found herself fielding increasingly desperate requests for assurance that humanity would never turn its weapons against fellow council members. The diplomatic protocols that had governed interstellar relations for millennia proved inadequate when dealing with a species that recognized no moral limitations on their destructive potential. Trade agreements were quietly suspended as species after species implemented defensive measures against human vessels. The victory celebrations that should have marked the end of the Harvester threat were replaced by nervous surveillance and urgent weapons development programs. The grateful requests for aid became careful monitoring of human activities, while the Council began developing contingency plans for containing their most dangerous ally. The galaxy had learned that some protectors were more frightening than any enemy. The psychological impact on the human crews themselves became apparent during the journey back to Earth. The weight of what they had accomplished, the scale of destruction they had unleashed, and the moral boundaries they had crossed left many questioning whether victory had been worth the price. The galaxy had called for aid, and humanity had answered with methods that challenged their own understanding of civilized behavior. Admiral Brooks filed his final report as the human fleet approached Earth's solar system, noting the successful completion of their mission and the elimination of the Harvester threat. The tactical data would be analyzed for future reference. The weapon systems would be improved and refined, and humanity would prepare for the next time the galaxy might require their unique brand of protection. The final transmission from the Galactic Council arrived as the human fleet entered Earth's orbit, carrying formal thanks for their contribution to galactic defense and polite requests that future cooperation be conducted through established diplomatic channels. The message was carefully worded, but its meaning was clear. Humanity's help had been effective, but it would never be requested again. The galaxy had survived its greatest threat, but the cost of victory had forever changed the balance of power. In civilized space, the species that had once been considered the youngest and most primitive members of the galactic community had revealed themselves to be capable of horrors that exceeded the mechanical efficiency of their enemies. The harvesters were gone, but in their place stood something that the galaxy feared even more: the knowledge that humanity was willing to destroy entire star systems to achieve victory. The price of calling for aid had been the revelation that some allies were more terrifying than any enemy, and that the willingness to use absolute force without moral constraint made humanity both the galaxy's greatest protector and its most feared threat. The stars themselves had become weapons in human hands, and the galaxy would never again underestimate the species that had emerged from a small blue world at the edge of civilized space.